this little baby that you've nurtured through development, pre-production and production now come together on a timeline and actually see it become a physical product. Hi everybody, welcome to Wedio Academy. My name is Sophie Haines and today I'll be talking to you guys about film production, the different stages of film production, how to get started and how you break into the industry. I am a co-founder and producer at London-based production company A Few Good Productions. I have worked in the production field in both film and commercials over the course of the year, and so I'll be talking to you about producing and production. So film production is essentially a term that encompasses all the different stages of making a film or a television series or a commercial. So you have different stages within film production. You have development, pre-production, production, post-production, and delivery. But effectively, film production itself is encompassing that whole process. And my role as the producer is very varied, but essentially my job is to make sure that the film production is always on budget, on time, and on brief. So I manage everything to ensure that those three key aspects are always maintained and are always kept exactly as they need to be. It's never an appealing job. It never sounds like a very appealing job, but I think it's a very rewarding one, because you get to be in a leadership position and it's very analytical, but it's also very creative. You get to exercise both sides of your brain. You have to be a really well-rounded person, I think, to be able to be a producer. You have to be a people person. You have to be able to jump into situations that you might not be very familiar with and be able to sort of muddle your way through and you have to be okay with making decisions right then and there. That's a really key part of being a producer. You have to know what decision to make right then and there on the spot, because those decisions will impact the rest of the production. So with great power comes great responsibility. And I think that's the other side of it, is that you have a lot of responsibility, and you are in a leadership role, and you are responsible for the project. And so that means that if something goes wrong, it's on you as well. So you need to be cautious, but also quietly confident, I think, to be able to really thrive as a producer. There's a million different ways that you can go into film production and film producing specifically. You ask any different producer, no path is the same. Some people come from post-production, some people come from production management, some people come from, brand work, client work. It also massively depends on the niche and that you're in within the industry. So a producer on a feature film is a very different type of producer to a commercial, and a very different type of producer to television. And then within producing roles, you also have different types of producers. So I'm sure you guys have heard of those. You've got executive producers, you've got co-producers, you've got producers, you've got associate producers, you have production managers. And each of those roles within the industry and within each niche has a different set of responsibilities. The one that I've worked in as a producer is I worked with AFGP to produce online content, and have worked in the commercial space as well. And I worked in production management on a documentary feature film as well. So my role has been quite varied, but realistically, the way that you get into the industry itself is through either being a runner, a team assistant, an office assistant, or a production assistant. Those are sort of the 4 roles that I can think of that are really the entry-level roles. And once you've gotten into those roles, you can kind of specify which way you want to go, depending on, what company you're working at. So I would say if you're interested in becoming a producer one day, you definitely want to stay within the production sphere. So you're looking at production companies, if you're looking to go into features, or you're looking at, if you want to go into commercials, you're looking at agencies, marketing agencies, or branded content production companies, and starting there as a runner or an office assistant, and then basically working your way up through the various roles of production management or development as well. There's quite a few different routes, and it can get quite convoluted. But the starting place for everybody, and I think that it's the best education you can get, is going in as a runner, an assistant's assistant, because you don't have much responsibility at that point, but you get to see so many different aspects of the industry, and you can really decide whether this is for you. There's a lot of different roles within the industry, and I think that the roles themselves can sound a little bit confusing to somebody who's new to the industry or hasn't worked in it and doesn't really know where to start. So, I mean, I just want to give a little bit of an overview in terms of the roles that you can have within the director department and within the production department. I mean, there's a million different departments with a million different roles, but I think those are the two that would be most important for somebody who's wanting to go down the producer route to really understand before anything else. So within the production department itself, you will have different roles, and each role has a different responsibility. Really, it starts out as a runner. So you'll start as production runner or office runner. And as a runner, you're running. You're running around, you're doing whatever production needs. You might be going and picking up, stationery, or getting the director his coffee or tea, or picking up snacks for the crew, or helping organize walkie-talkies, or printing things. It really varies. It's whatever you're needed for on that day. That's what you're doing. That's the entry level as a production runner or an office runner or a team assistant. Sometimes it's called team assistant or office assistant. And those are sort of the entry level roles. Then in the production department, you go up and you've got the production secretary and features, or a production assistant in commercials. And they are the lowest of the production level, but theirs is an office job. And they will be, looking after, maybe they'll be looking after talent or crew, or, they might be assisting the production coordinator, or they'll be assisting the production manager in whatever they need to be doing. They are effectively the chain of command goes production assistant or production secretary, and they'll be assisting the person above them. Above that, you have a production coordinator in features. You can also have production coordinators in commercials, and they are generally production coordinators are responsible for all the accommodation, all the travel of everybody. And running that side of things. So making sure all the bookings are done, making sure the visas are done, making sure the equipment's getting where it's supposed to be, all the cars are getting all the people on set, and managing those timings and making sure that you're not going over budget. That's what a production coordinator does. Then you've got production manager. A production manager is the person who basically manages the production day to day. So they will be the one who'll send out the call sheets. They'll be the one who'll be sending out the schedules. Call sheets are sent out every day. They are like basically a little Bible or a little blueprint of what is going to be happening on set the next day, and what time everybody needs to be there, what scenes are being shot, weather, contact numbers. It's called a call sheet because it has everybody's phone numbers, so you can call them. And that's the role of the production manager, to basically run the production for the line producer. And so the line producer will be the one who will, in connection with the lead producer, create the budget. And so the production manager runs the budget for the line producer. The line producer then checks the production manager's work. And then the line producer hands over the budget to the the lead producer, who will make sure that everything is, in accordance with where it's supposed to be. Those are sort of the production roles in the production team. And they pretty much work like that throughout pre-production and during production as well. Generally, a production team will work away from the set. They'll work in an office or a unit base or elsewhere. They won't generally be on set because they need laptops and Wi-Fi and printers. Although, if you can, go green and don't print as much. But yeah, so generally that will be the production role. Then you've got the director department. And so with directors, you've got a first AD, a second AD, a third AD, a crowd AD. You've got, and they're all, AD is short for assistant director. A first assistant director is actually the person who really runs the set. They're the person who makes the schedule, and they're the person who's calling things out on the day, making sure that the director's on time, making sure that the shots are on time, making sure that everybody is where they're supposed to be and doing what they're supposed to be doing. They are really the one who is sort of like they'll be the loudest on set in terms of like calling out things that they need, and they have a team to help them, their assistant director's team, to make sure that, you know, the talent's coming on at the right time, and you know, the right person is going to be on set and the right crew member has done the right thing, and that they are basically responsible for the workings of the set. And then you have the second and third AD who are there to assist the first AD, and a crowd AD, which will be in charge of the background artists or the extras. And that department as a whole will also have runners. So if you're interested in going and being the person who runs the set, then you'll be looking for the AD runners as an entry level job. As a producer, your role is essentially there to facilitate the production. So you tend to be the one who's doing all the hiring, or you're in charge of that. But that doesn't mean that you're giving the crew and, you know, the people you're hiring an opportunity to work in film. They are giving you the opportunity to make sure that your film is being done. So I think ensuring that you always keep it in mind that the crew isn't working for you, you're working as a team, and making sure that you keep that humbleness is really important, because at the end of the day, as a producer, you're only as good as the crew around you. And if the crew around you don't like you, or don't want to work with you, or don't enjoy their working environment for whatever reason, which is your responsibility, you're not going to end up having a very good production. That would be the main thing, my main point. And then I suppose you can look at it from other aspects as well. There's attention to detail. When you're producing content, you have to think so many steps ahead of where the production is currently at. You're always working weeks and weeks in advance of where the production is currently at in its stage, because you're preparing for that next stage. So making sure that you are really detail oriented, and making sure that you're really checking, double checking, triple checking the work that you're doing, to make sure that when that time arrives where that production is in that stage, you know, you are actually able to sort of leave that behind you, because you know you've worked on it and you know you've done everything that you need to do, and you don't need to sit and think about it and worry about it. And that attention to detail also makes sure that there aren't mistakes that happen, because if you make a mistake as the producer, it has such knock-on effects to the whole production and to all of the crew and all of the cast and the production as a whole, that sometimes it can be really catastrophic. So making sure that you're not making those mistakes, and that also comes from that comes from learning and time and experience. You know, you're going to make mistakes, obviously, everybody does, but at the same time, doing the best you can to avoid those is really, really important, because your role is all about organization and planning. This is also why I think it's so important that you start off as a runner, because a producer essentially has to think through the whole project from start to finish and organize everything. You know, they organize the budgets, the creatives, the schedules. They are ultimately responsible for all three of those things. So in order to be able to do that, you have to really understand every department, and you have to understand it better than just a little bit. You know, if you don't really understand how VFX works or the timelines and schedules involved with VFX, that could be catastrophic if your film it ends up, you know, being VFX heavy. Because if you haven't built in enough time into the schedule or built in enough money into the budget at the beginning in the development stages, when you get to that post-production stage when you're doing VFX, if you don't know that you needed to leave this amount of lead time or you needed to leave this amount of budget for it, you're stuck with a film that's half done that you can't complete. So you need to be able to understand all of the processes and all of the stages in the production as well and as much as possible in order to be able to do your job. And to go further, to go from a good to a great producer, I also think it's really important that you spend as much time learning the departments within production as well. That means understand as much about cameras, about data, you know, codecs, all those kinds of things, editing, about makeup and hair and costuming and wardrobe and all those different aspects. The more you can learn about those, the better you're going to be as a producer, because you'll be able to, first of all, empathize with people and understand why the, you know, hair stylist needs an extra 35 minutes to put on a specific wig, or why, you know, set needs an extra 3 days to build this specific thing, because you have an understanding of the basics of it. Yeah, so I think the thing that sets apart a good from a great producer is somebody who has experience and is really well-rounded in as many different departments. Now, you don't need to be you don't need to be, you know, the best editor, the best hairstylist, the best cinematographer in the world to be a good producer. But understanding all of those things is really important, because you won't be able to do your job as effectively if you don't. In film production, there are 5 key stages of the production process. So you have development, pre-production, production, post-production, and distribution. Now, I'm going to talk about all of these different stages in as much detail as possible, but I also want you to bear in mind that the stages and the processes of each one will vary depending on the niche that you're working in. So if you're working in feature films, the processes will look very different to commercials, and again, very different to television. They all have that overarching, you know, 5 stages, but the details and the finer, you know, intricacies of each stage will vary depending on which niche you're working in. And that's because essentially you're creating different things, although it's still a film at the end of the day, and certain things have to stay the same. You know, the development of an advertising commercial and a feature film are going to be vastly different to also a TV commercial or a TV series, right? And within that, you also have different producers who work at different stages. So you'll have a development producer, you can have line producers, you can have post-production producers, you know, you have distributors who effectively work as producers for distribution. You know, and you've got all these different producers who carry the process through each stage as well. And you'll always have one producer who works at the top, at the whole, and oversees the whole production, and is that sort of thread throughout every stage. And throughout each stage, you bring on different people with different skill sets to be able to manage certain aspects that you as the producer, you know, of the whole project might not be able to do. So I want that to be really clear and be kept in mind, because otherwise it can get a bit convoluted. So we'll start with development. So development, the 3 sort of key parts of developing any project is that the script has to be completed, the financing has to be in place, and the various partners have to be brought on board. For a commercial project, the way it would start is the script will essentially be created by a marketing agency who will be instructed by a brand that they would like to do a film of some sort. Marketing agency have internal teams that would come up with the whole creative. Then a creative brief will be created by the marketing agency, and that marketing agency brief will then be sent out to a production company. That's where the producer of the production company will come on board. So they will read that brief and then they will create a budget. They will budget the project based on the script and the creative and the timelines and how much money is available. And then they'll send that back to the marketing agency for the client and the marketing agency to decide on whether they want to go ahead. There will also be a point where different directors and key creatives will be sent to the marketing agency as sort of options of who can be the creative helm of this project. So it's essentially you're pitching for the work, and the budget is created by the producer alongside pitching the different directors. So you send that off to the marketing agency, they then decide, hopefully you win the job, and that's the end of development. And once you get the green light, then you move into pre-production. That's commercial work. Now, development in features is a whole different ballgame. So let's say in this scenario, it's the production company that have the script. So what will happen is a producer will work with a writer to create a script, and you'll develop the script. So you have also got, bear in mind, you've got development producers who can work alongside here, and they generally are constantly on the lookout for new stories and new ideas, reading loads of books, watching the news, reading loads of different, they've got so many different resources that they pull from to find a story. And once they find a good story, they pair a writer together, they write the script. That script is then researched and put through so many different tests to see how it will appeal to audiences. And in the meantime, the producer starts putting together a business plan and a sort of massive pitch document. They then go out and start sending out the script or the business plan, the pitch deck, whatever they have already, and they start looking for finance. And you can find finance from, you've got private investors, you've got film funding bodies, you've got crowdfunding, you've got studios, distributors that you can find finance in, co-productions. There's a whole different way, and finance in and of itself is a whole other topic, and raising finance. But yeah, effectively, whilst the script is being developed, the producer of the project will go out there and they will effectively sell the project to as many people as they can to try and get financing for the film. At the same time, you'll also, if not already attached, have a director who's coming on board to direct the project, and you might even send the script out, if it's in a state to be sent out, to agents to pass on to cast to hopefully get talent attached to the project. Talent attached to a project also massively helps with financing a project. If you've got a big name attached to a feature film script saying, yep, I'll play the lead role if this ever gets the green light, that will help with film financing, because that also helps with marketing down the line and distribution. So yeah, so those are sort of two ways. And effectively, once you've got the script finalized, the financing in place, and all the various media partners and creative partners on board to the project, you're out of development. But it is a long process. It can take years in some cases. For some feature films, 10 years in development. Commercials not so much. But yeah, so it is a very lengthy process, and it is the role of the producer is to really manage that whole process and be the lead of the business end and the creative end too. So then you go into pre-production. So then once you get into pre-production, this is where the role of the producer really changes. So previously, where you were, going around networking, trying to find finance, bringing people out to lunch and trying to convince them to give you money to make your film, or, talking to an agency or a client, or pitching, your work. Now that you've gotten that work and it's all signed off and you know that you can, do the film, you need to start preparing for production. So that effectively means you are going to start working on crew, hiring all the right crew. You're going to start working through the permits, the locations, the cast, the creatives needed, and you'll be setting up the accommodation, if there's travel, if there's visas, the equipment, and you need to get all of these things in place and ready so that when you turn up on the first day of principal shooting, everything goes off without a hitch, And that's, so you'll spend, sometimes you'll spend a week, sometimes you'll spend 3 weeks, sometimes you'll spend 2 months in pre-production, sometimes a year. It really varies on the project, but that's all worked out in development because the budget's already been done, the finance has already been done. So you know how much time you have for pre-production. So the production team as a whole are effectively working towards the deadline, and the deadline is first day of principal shooting. And you'll have various teams that will come in as you get closer and closer to the deadline to start working. For example, costume, set. The director will be there the whole time. They'll be prepping all the creative sides of things and making all those creative decisions, talking to the different people, talking to whoever needs to have an answer that day, getting the cast all done, rehearsing sometimes. Yeah, so pre-production is a very hectic time for a producer, but it's a very exciting time because this is where you really get to get your teeth stuck in. You get to start organizing and really start pulling things out and making sure that everything is set up for first day of shooting. And then, once you get to the end of pre-production, that means you're in production. So that's when the hard work really begins. And that's where everybody turns up on set. It's what everybody knows. It's where everybody turns up on set and principal filming begins. And for a producer, you tend to work, I was saying earlier, you tend to work weeks in advance because you do. So if a producer, I always say, if a producer's done their job well on set, they don't really have anything to do because on that day, because they've already done it all. That's already been planned, 2 weeks out. They're working on 2 weeks or 4 weeks ahead, and that's what they'll be doing that day. So as long as all of the attention to detail has been met and all the work has been done correctly, on that day, the producer doesn't really have anything to do with the day-to-day runnings. That will be the assistant director who runs the set, the first AD, alongside the director, obviously, who's leading creative. So in production, basically, all the producer does is make sure that production is running smoothly. They'll sit there, they'll watch the dailies, they might watch what's happening on set, making sure that everything is going well, but really they're prepping for post-production and prepping for distribution and making sure that all the funding is still coming in and make sure they're going to be able to pay everybody and running all of that, making sure that everybody is happy. And if there are any issues, generally you'll push that up the line. We'll start with the production manager who will get the brunt of the issues. And if the production manager can't fix it, if you have a line producer, then it will go up to the line producer. If the line producer can't fix it, then it will go up to the producer. So really, that's on a feature film. So really, if you have a lot of buffer between what's actually happening in the nitty-gritty on set, on the day, between you, the producer, and the actual production team on set. That's on a feature. On a commercial, you won't have as many people in between. You might, depending on the budget, but generally you won't. So the producer will probably be more involved in the day-to-day, but they will still be thinking about what's happening in the next few days in post-production and managing all of those things and setting things up so that way the project can go off without a hitch once you're out of production. So once principal filming is finished, you're out of production, and then you're moving into post-production. Post-production is where the magic happens. It is where everything comes together and you get to see everything for the first time. And it's also where you get to see everything for the first time. But it's really exciting. I love post-production. It's my favorite part because you get to see all the hard work of everybody come together, and you get to see, this little baby that you've nurtured through development, pre-production and production now come together on a timeline and actually see it become a physical product. And so that's where the editors will come in, and VFX and sound and, colorists and oh goodness, there's a whole host of people in post-production. I mean, I could go on for days about post-production because it is complex. I actually think there might be a masterclass that Rory Nichols has done on editing. You might want to check that one out. But yeah, so post-production is really, it's a whole other workflow. And you have post-production producers as well. For a producer, a lead producer of a whole project, their role really in post-production is managing budget and managing creative. And well, they're also managing time, but you'll be sitting there, you'll be doing a lot of reviews, you'll be making sure that if you're working on a commercial, the client is happy with it and the client is happy with the final end product. If you're working on a feature, again, you might have a client depending on who's financing. That the client is happy with the film, and you'll be doing reviews and you'll be giving notes and feedback, and you'll be sitting there alongside the director, and the director will ask you for feedback because your job as well is to give creative input, because you have to make sure that the job stays on brief. So whilst the creative leader is really the director, as a producer, you're also giving a lot of creative, input, which is great. So once the film is out of post-production, then it's in delivery and distribution. That's a lot of paperwork more than anything else. For a producer, more than anything else, it's just a lot of paperwork. And you'll be working with a distributor. If you're in a feature film, you'll have met and decided on a distributor before you've even started pre-production. So those plans will have been in motion way before. Marketing the film will have been in plan way before you've started anything, because you need all of those contracts for cast, for example, written up. You need to know where they need to be, if you're going to be doing promos with the cast, if they need to be at the premiere, and all those kinds of things. All of those things will already be agreed upon in development. So really it's just about distribution, is, from a lead producer's point of view, is really about executing the plans you agreed in development and getting the paperwork done. And that is long, very, very long. But yeah, essentially those are the 5 stages of production and the role that a producer has in all of those 5 stages. So there's this saying in the industry, I think, it's like, oh, we'll fix it in post. We'll fix it in post. And that's when you make a mistake during production or pre-production. Generally it's production. And you think, okay, well, how do I fix this? How are we going to remedy this? And you go, it's fine, we'll just fix it in post. My secret tip is just, you can't fix everything in post. Sometimes, most of the time, generally, you can fix things in post. But this sort of goes back to why I think it's also really important that you understand as many of the stages in as much detail as possible, because some things you genuinely cannot fix in post. And it's a bit of a joke on a set when someone's, oh, we'll fix it in post. And all the editors are like, oh yeah, that's my job now to fix the problems that productions have made. And it is a very real issue. There are times where, it does need to be fixed in post, but as the producer, it's your call. So in order to be able to make that call, you need to understand the capabilities of post-production and the capabilities of an editor or a VFX artist or a colorist or whatever it might be, because some problems, yes, can be fixed in post, but some problems just cannot be fixed in post. And if you don't know the capabilities of post-production, you can't make that call there on the day when you have the talent, when you have the crew, when you have the whole setup. You can't make that call to go, actually, no, we can't fix this in post. We need to do it now and reshoot now. Because say you don't know what happens, right, in post, or say you don't know the capabilities and you go, yeah, cool, we'll fix it in post. Then you get into the cutting room, you get into the editing room, and the editor turns around and goes, yeah, we can't fix this. You then have to go back out, set a whole, second shoot up again and reshoot whatever it is that's been messed up that you didn't shoot originally on that day, or that wasn't quite right on that day. So yeah, you can't always fix everything in post. Thanks guys for watching my masterclass on film production. My name is Sophie Haines and I've been here with Wedio Academy and it's been great. And make sure you don't miss all their other great masterclasses. And you can check out some of my work on www.afewgoodproductions.com. And I hope to see you guys in the future in the industry. All right, bye guys.